Welcome back to Behind the Play. It's been a while, guys. I am so excited to be back with one of my favorite duos out there. We're missing it might be a trio without Witter, but Maddie Ireland of the Canada Hoops podcast and Jonathan Chen of Raptors Republic as well. We're going to be talking about Canada. The Canadian men's team has announced their training camp roster, and hallelujah, guys, it's everything we've wanted. We have Andrew Wiggins, Jamal Murray, SGA, 12 NBAers, Zach Edey, who will be an NBAer soon. It's essentially everyone that Canada basketball fans have been yearning for to have that super team. And it's just really exciting to finally see it. What were your guys' first reactions just to seeing the list, and how excited are you? Maybe Maddie. I know you always bring the emotion into it with Canada hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the list is too much of a surprise, obviously, for a lot of us. It's just the great thing about it is, you mentioned how many NBA guys are there now, and the program has worked long and hard, and obviously the players themselves to develop and uh, to really have the infrastructure in this country to get to this point. But now we're going to get to a situation in a couple weeks where there is probably going to be an NBA player left off, the senior men's national team this summer. And, if you think back to the dark times of the program, tough times, not a lot of money, not a lot of interest from the players. Yeah, to be in this situation now is really, really cool. Um, you know, Hats off to Canada basketball itself. They've done a lot of work to make the program really attractive for the players as well. And you listen to what Mike Bartlett was saying today, and Rowan Barrett, even Jordy, like they recognize the importance of this, and I think the players do too. And they're really going to go in there and fight for an opportunity and demonstrate, why they should be on this team and moving forward too, right? Because that's something we got to consider is the next cycle in 4 years for Los Angeles, and the World Cup too in 27 as well. But yeah, just a great list. I mean, everybody you want to see there. Um, and there's going to be maybe a surprise or two at camp. I know Alex, you'll be there, so you'll be checking things out. But super great list, a lot of depth and veteran experience, and a core of players from last summer that, won the bronze at the World Cup, man.
Jonathan, when I saw the list, a part of my brain just went to your brain and thinking about you're like, oh, the schematics of like Wiggins, Murray, SGA on the court, the pick and rolls, um, you know,
Right.
weak side offense, all that kind of stuff. Maybe what was going through your mind, when you saw the names on that list, and that Canada will be sending a pretty good team to Paris.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it was like Maddie said, for people who have kind of been following Canada basketball for a while, this is basically everybody that we thought um was going to be involved. I think there's a lot of question marks about Andrew Wiggins, and I actually look, he had a really tough start to the season, but I thought, the last 50-ish games he was a lot better. Um, and I think it's like kind of like what Rowan Barrett said today, where, I've been a big proponent of the core, and the summer core and kind of keeping that core together. But I think the truth is like there were some things that that core was lacking that could only be kind of taken care of by reaching out of the core. One of the things was kind of a true backup ball handler. We saw kind of Trey Haynes struggle in that role as the competition kind of got higher and higher as the tournament went on. They could have went, Corey Joseph, Kevin Pangos, who have both, are kind of on the downhill for their career, but well, I'm sure we'll talk about that after. Um, but yeah, so then they come in with Andrew Nemhard, who I think you guys both know I'm a very big fan of. And I really do think that he is an exceptional young player, not even just like young Canadian NBA players, but like one of the great young players in the league. Um, and yeah, and the other thing was, aside from the bigs, was like kind of like a vertical presence. Um, someone you can throw a lob to, someone who can kind of like cut on the baseline and you pass it to them and then they can make a play vertically. And that's Andrew Wiggins, especially at the wing. And so I think they did a like this is again this is everything you could have asked for, and I'm sure after a couple days I'll have more thoughts about the schematics of it. But I think they bring a lot of versatility, and I think the big thing is just addressing things that they kind of lacked
Yeah.
last summer.
I think what's interesting, and you alluded to it with the fact that they needed to bring in some talent. And, I think that's the great debate that we've had last year with the continuity versus just pure talent, right? And you could
Yeah.
see that against Spain, who wasn't nearly as talented as Canada last year and really pushed them because they had that continuity. And at the same time, Canada won out because you know what? They had SGA at the end and Dylan Brooks raining down threes. So I think that's what Canada basketball had. The task was to maybe reunite players and bring in that additional talent while also focusing on continuity. But because they already had a year with all those 7 NBA guys last year and their success, I think it almost diminishes a little bit of that impact of worrying about continuity.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're going to have to bring in Wiggins, which will be a big thing in terms of like, is he going to come off the bench? Is he going to start? That might be a thing. And obviously other players as well. Trey Lyles, Jamal Murray, if he plays, would be obviously so much talent onto that roster. But at the same time, Dylan Brooks, RJ Barrett, SGA, Nikhil, they've all played together. Obviously Olynyk and Powell as well. So I think because of last year, it means bringing in that extra talent doesn't, it's not as bad for the continuity as like, let's say the USA, right? Even though they'll have more talent on paper, um, they will have essentially never played together, or in the case of KD and Steph Curry, not for 5 years, right? So it's a bit different. And I think that at the end of the day, it's a different tournament, it's a different year. You bring in the best players and you make it work. And do you think Canada, with maybe you add Nemhard, but to the team last year, will do better than you know what it looks like with the infusion of Jamal Murray and Andrew Wiggins? I think I like that team much more, in a short tournament, even if there's maybe a bit less continuity. But um, I guess just going from that, like how how exciting is it just to finally have that team all together all at once? Because I feel like I've seen Andrew Wiggins in that Canada jersey for like 20 years and or not 20 years, but for like 10 years and dreaming of it at the Olympics. Like, are you guys at the point where you're now like, oh my God, it's happening. It's finally here.
Yeah, I'm pumped. And I know like I was looking at the schedule for both the men's and women's team just for, all coverage purposes for the program, right? And they got a great schedule in terms of the days in between. And I think what's interesting is that all the discussion about potential roster, camp invites, who's attending, the past year really after the World Cup leading up to today and today with the announcement. And, like we said, the names don't really differ much from what we thought, but it felt like Christmas. And I just think, there's going to be a lot of moments and games in the Olympics. I still think the core from last summer, you add Jamal, Andrew Nemhard, Wiggins, you got to figure is probably going to make this team. Minutes beyond those guys aren't going to really be there. And if things go well on the floor with this group that's there, there's not extended minutes for a lot of guys, maybe that were not part of the team last year, and so, uh, like Jonathan said, TBH struggled a little bit with some tougher pressure. But now Andrew Nemhard comes in and plays that role and may not play a ton, if Shea's going and he's cooking and defensively he's okay, no foul trouble. And same for Jamal too, then um, the depth we're gonna take is really great, but I don't know how much guys are gonna play, right? And yeah, it's just I can't wait to see them actually play games together. Like so much of them, the familiarity last summer with Jordy and what they run, and um, I think there's some guys really hungry for this opportunity. Like you can tell kind of some of their social media stuff, what they're thinking about with this summer, and I've been a Trey Lyles proponent the last year, um, and he seems locked in and ready. He's putting stuff out there that he wants this opportunity, and the familiarity with Jordy helps. And it could really come down to him fighting for that last spot. So um, I think everyone should be super excited. The setup of the Olympics bodes well for this group, no question, especially compared to the World Cup last summer. And they just got to go see what's in front of them.
Well, with that, you kind of alluded to it. There's the 7 NBA guys from last year with Dort, SJ, Nikhil, Kelly, Dwight, um, um,
RJ
RJ.
RJ.
There we go.
and
That's
Brooks.
7. And then you
And
would
Brooks.
imagine, as you said, that those 7 will be at going to Paris. You'd imagine if Murray is healthy and he's obviously at training camp, he'll be there. Nemhard, Wiggins, I doubt is cut from this team. So you essentially have 2 spots for grabs, and this team, the real weakness of this team is their size, right? They don't really have too many bigs. And Jonathan, I know you're a master at detailing what bigs. Yeah, I know you love Kyle Alexander. Just maybe talk about those last 2 spots, and probably at least one of those will go to a big. Zach Edey's on this roster. Alexander, Maddie talked about Lyles. Your boy Cabin Gailey that you scooped going to the roster as well. Just maybe who do you think takes those last 2 spots? Obviously, with a bit of time until they make that decision.
Yeah, no, I think for me, like this is all up in the air based on the team that's gonna actually draft him in the first round. It looks like this year, Zach Edey. I think last year he was not great. I think there was like a lot of flashes, especially so a lot of people bring up that USA game where he got was like a -10. I went through all those pick and roll possessions, and like honestly, it was okay. Like he made some mistakes, fouled a little bit, chose the wrong angle, but I think there was like some flashes that of something that would be all right at the level of the Olympics. And I think this year, his conditioning he got a lot better. And he tested really well at the combine. Um, so I still think that for me, Zach Edey is still um, the third big for me, just based on like he's a kind of a different profile than basically every other big on the roster or on the invite list. So I think that would be my 11th guy. Um, is Lyles already on like in the list? Not yet, right? Like in the 10 that we counted already.
No, no, he isn't. No.
Right. Okay, yeah, I think then I'd probably just go with Lyles. Um, I think it's Lyles is some pretty good insurance. In the sense where like he can kind of do some things very similar to Kelly. He can shoot a little bit, but not quite like be a movement shooter like Kelly is, but just maybe 80% of that. He's a great passer, especially off the dribble with the Kings this year. So I'd probably bring him as well. Um, yeah, I love Kyle Alexander. But I think like, if somebody like Edie isn't going to be able to be available, then I think you drop down a tier and you look at the matchup between Birch, Alexander, and Kabengele. And I think it depends on like what you really want because I think obviously Kabengele hasn't been involved in the program at all. And he's like 6'9", so a little undersized, but like I think by far he might be one of the most physical bigs on the roster, and he's kind of like the bull in like the China shop where like he just bumps off of people and he just bulldozes his way and he runs really hard. Like his work rate is really insane. So, I think if yeah, so I guess to sum it up, if Edie isn't there, I think definitely bring one of Birch, Alexander, or Kabengele, but overall I think I would go with Edie and Lyles.
Mhm. Do you think there's any chance of maybe bringing in a Brissett who is kind of part of that core 14, or doesn't really make too much sense?
Yeah, no, I'm not the biggest fan of Brissett's kind of profile. Um, I think what he does offer you is kind of like a switchable defender. and some kind of like wing size and some vertical pop, right? And I think like if you have somebody like Andrew Wiggins, who kind of offers a lot of that vertical pop and that size on the wing and kind of more like perimeter slanted defense, not as quite as much bigs. Um, I think maybe it doesn't make as much sense there. But then again, Jordy loved to play small last year, especially defensively. He loved to switch, using Powell at the five as like the lone big and switching everything was one of his favorite things to do. So like I totally understand if he wants to bring Brissett. Um, but to me, he's kind of like more of like a
The,
long shot.
and redundancy, right? Like you have Brooks,
Yeah.
have Dort, you have a bunch of wing defenders. Like this team has so many wings and so many ball handlers. If Jamal and is there, I guess Maddie, just with that, I know you've been on the train where it's Uncle Mel for a while now, and Rowan Barrett said that they'll probably have their roster by the end of the game in Las Vegas on July 11th. Will Uncle Mel be part of the team going to Europe in your mind? Do you think he, with his cachet as being part of the program for so long, will be one of those last spots? Or do you think it might go to, Lyles and maybe another guy, another big?
I sure hope so. I hope Melvin Edgem is a part of this team just for, what the program has stressed, going back to the last 3, 4 years now. And Mel's answered the call, he's played summer and winter windows. And the guys love him too. You could see it in video footage that, Canada basketball and shut out Muad for doing all those great clips. But, the young guys love him and look up to him and admire him and just the career and sacrifice he's had. My concern is that in an effort to really try to bring talent, more versatility, that, Mel's not going to make the team, right? So,
Mm.
I mean, in my 12, Mel's there. He's the 12th man. And I'm sure he'd take that role, no question. But yeah, that to me, that's kind of the outlier right now. You look at the invite list, and you know, there was one point kind of being mentioned about, prior to the list coming out was like, look, there's an invite list, and then there's actually those that will make it and attend, right? So maybe we don't see all of this list there at the start of camp, for whatever reason, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I do really like Trey a lot, and that could be a situation where he grabs that last spot. Um, because I think Zach Edey needs to be on this team, provided that it works with getting drafted summer league and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that
I,
would force Mel out, but the fan and the supporter in me would love to see Mel there, no question.
maybe I'm just so traumatized from that USA game that Jonathan alluded to, but I just don't think it makes enough sense with Edie just for what this team needs. And I think, 2028, he might be the perfect player to be in that lineup in his prime. And I'm not saying he hasn't taken a big jump at Purdue. Winning national player of the year twice is pretty impressive. And he was a pleasure to deal with in Jakarta, but I just don't know if at the Olympics that's the big they need. I don't think against Jokic it's like a great match, although he has the size. That would be quite funny though. I would say I'd pay a lot to see Edie try to lock up Jokic. But I just
Yeah.
wondered them. Mhm.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it'll be like first couple of possessions, Jokic will like have to like get used to the size and the length, and then after it'll be toast. Then after it might be toast, but maybe he can just camp in the paint, no three in the key, just
It
camp in the
does
paint.
help. It does help.
Yeah.
I think maybe it makes sense. I don't know. And I just think with the him being drafted, it's going to be so hard for him
Yeah.
unless he falls to 19 with the Raptors, maybe. And they do us a solid, get Edie and Bronny James. Wouldn't that be?
Oh God. Oh
But
God.
But the strength of this team is the guards and the wings and versatility, like defensively in situations with that too. So and Jordy alluded to that. He did an interview last week for I think it was 590 in Toronto there, and They recognize that. So I don't think they're too concerned about quote unquote lack of size. And I just think they're gonna try to find a way to bring the roster that maybe gets them um yeah, a little more quicker.
Yeah.
You know, a little more pop like Chen said, right? So who knows, man? I mean, Zach did make a huge jump. We're gonna need some size. There's some massive players in the Olympics from these other countries, but
That
I think they demonstrated that they can play a certain way with, our lack of size, if you will. Um, so we'll see what they try to do here.
that I think that's why I'm out on Edgem, not because I'm not against it. It's more that there's just not enough spots for him, I think. If it was a 14-man roster, I'd be way more open to him having a
Yeah,
spot.
what's up
But
with it just being 12
I
too?
don't
Like, I
I
don't
have
get
no
it.
that's the NBA has 15 and 4 anyways.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh,
But
I have something to say about Edgem too. This is unrelated to what happens on the basketball court for Canada, or kind of, but he's had a very successful couple of years. So I think he plays for Unicaja Malaga. I'm
Mhm.
definitely mispronouncing that.
Yep.
But like I think 2023, they won a trophy, the Copa del Rey, which is like the Spanish domestic
Yeah.
tournament, like NBA in-season tournament kind of thing. Then he wins the bronze medal with Canada, and then this year they won the FIBA Basketball Champions League. Um, so hey, maybe he's the good luck charm. That's all I'm
Maybe
saying.
he always gets the silverware. Maybe that's it. That's the thing. I guess just for me, I see it like I also remember Victoria, and we had Lyles and Powell, and Powell got in foul trouble, and Lyles was against a 7-footer, and it just didn't go well. And I think that just because of the construct of this team, that they almost need two bigs. And Lyles isn't really a five; he's more like a four, right? So that's why for me it makes sense to bring Lyles in, and then one of Kambageli, even Edie too. But I just don't think
Yeah,
he's there yet. Alexander, and for me, if Birch is healthy, I like Birch because I think he's played for the national team. I think he's really good in FIBA, just like he's so physical too, athletic, but he also has been injured for years. So it depends on what Birch you're getting, but if you get a locked in 2022 Kem Birch, I
when
don't
he
mind.
first joined the Raptors.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of how I feel about the roster. But I guess with that, Maddie, you kind of alluded to it, and we had some conversations off air about notable omissions. Maybe talk about a little bit the Kojo situation with Corey Joseph being left off the team. Wasn't very happy. Chris Boucher today had a no comment Instagram story about presumably not making even the invite list. Tristan Thompson as well, although he might just be in Kardashian land. What do you make of those omissions, and maybe how Canada basketball's interacted with a player like Corey Joseph, who was frustrated, and Chris Boucher?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the number one omission is probably obviously Corey and, committed to the core and, um, was there last summer in Toronto and withdrew due to injury with some back problems. And, I think that one, um, the article was in conversation that, Grange and shout out Michael for everything he does and was interesting. And I think Corey felt like he had to put something out there just to let everyone know, like, look, this wasn't my decision. And to rather dodge questions of why he's not there, which typically get asked by the fan base and the community. But, you know, I love Corey. I've said that a lot. I think in episodes that I have, with guests, I'll always say like I've put Corey in my top five for the program just because of his commitment and sacrifice. But he had a tough year and didn't get a lot of minutes. And then after he got traded to Indiana, got waived. And I think he was looking like this at the camp as an opportunity to kind of show people, I can still get a spot in the league. And um, I don't know, there's two sides to every story. And there is some information that some people know that I just don't really want to put on the episode. But, you know, it's tough, right? And Corey's been a GOAT for the program and an OG and, bit of a surprised in a sense, but also not. And I think how it how it was handled was good, and I'm okay with it. And conversations that we've had and conversations I've had with others, there's also a point too where the program just has to move on a little bit too, right? And it's unfortunate. It's like um, we have this wealth of guard talent, and Chris Boucher, man, you know, not surprised he wasn't on the list, and Slim Duck can feel how he wants to feel, right? That's his right. So,
I think
he has tried to play in the past, but um, he has had injuries, and then yeah, like maybe he wants to just be at camp, be around the guys, and I could totally understand that too. Who doesn't like to hang out with their boys, right? But he wouldn't make this team.
uh,
Like there's no way, right? So I mean, the invite, the lack of it probably stings and might sting for others too. But um, the reality is we got a good sense, I think, of what this roster is going to look like, right? And I don't think he'd be on it.
yeah, I think that's almost a testament to Canada basketball that there's, two NBA guys, although, not in the best form for Joseph, who was out of the league at the end of the season, and obviously Boucher, who was mired on the bench in Toronto, but that they cut them, and it's kind of a story, but it's also not, and these players, I don't think would ever be on this roster, especially considering who's coming, and as you said, Maddie, it's kind of time is come where we cut NBA players, and we're going to cut essentially probably an NBAer, uh, um, at this invite list, and that's pretty much a crazy testament to where this program is at, and it's just so exciting. Like I can't. I saw the list and I just said, okay, you got to be kidding me. It's all I want. It's like my Christmas. I think you tweeted that like Christmas came early, and that happened, and yeah. I
One,
guess
one, one more thing about Corey Alex is in summer of 2022, they played the qualifier uh, against Argentina and Victoria. Fortunate enough to be there, do the media thing, hang out with Grange. Great night. They got 6 NBA guys there um, at the time, and Corey was there, and uh, veteran role, right? And Corey looked good, and just in that limited minutes, limited role. And I had a conversation with him the next morning at the airport, and um, so I guess where I'm going with that is the surprise last summer at camp, and you were there in Toronto, is to have the withdrawal. I saw that and I just thought, well, that's kind of strange, right? Because if you feel like, if he can find a way to play, that he would be on the team, limited role, right? So, um, his time is probably done, and we thank him for his service, right? And we move forward, and hopefully, he wants to kind of find a way to get back to the program at some point. And, hey, he might wind up in the NBA again this season. You never know, right? So.
Jonathan, just like off that, and you're talking about like guys that aren't on the roster. Let's talk a little bit about the roster, and presuming that there is health. Like I keep thinking, who is the starting five? And if I had to ask one person that, it would be you, Jonathan. So right now, as we speak, presuming everyone's healthy and happy and in Paris, really Lille, as my, I wouldn't call him a friend, but Brian Windhorse always says the players think they're going to Paris to begin with, but
Right.
don't tell them that they're actually going to Lille. Um, but with that, what's your starting five when Canada starts the tournament in Lille as we speak today?
Right. Okay. I'm gonna give you two answers. I'm gonna give
Okay.
you what I would want to do, and then I'll give you what I think might happen.
Okay.
So this is gonna be a really hot take, and I'm sure you guys already know where I'm going with this. It's gonna be Jamal and Shay, right?
Hot take.
Yeah, no, that's not the hot take part. Where you know, um, and then I'm gonna go with Powell and Olynyk. So get everybody there. That's already typical, I think. Um, but what I would want would be Andrew Nemhard. I know it doesn't make as much sense. It doesn't make as much sense for roster construction because then maybe you don't have a guard off the bench anymore. Um, And there's a lot of issues that come up with it. But look, I'm all about putting some of the best players on the floor. Okay, okay, that's maybe a little too ridiculous, but like, look, I believe in Andrew Nemhard, and I think the one concern with a Jamal Shea backcourt is who are they going like how are they going to defend on the other end? Because, you know, as good as Shea is at kind of playing in the gaps, getting deflections from behind and kind of being an off-ball defender, which he's gotten really good at, especially like generating all those stocks and things like that. Um, the truth is, like, I think both of them they have lapses off ball as well, and also they're not the most locked in or even great on ball defenders as well. And so I think if especially if you're looking at somebody like Australia with Patty Mills, who I know is aging, but he is a microwave scorer and he's gonna run around. He's gonna need somebody to chase him. I'm thinking, you can throw Andrew Nemhard there, and then Andrew Nemhard can also be your primary ball handler on the other end, probe for advantages. Anyways, okay, yeah. That's obviously not going to
I
happen.
love you, Jonathan, but that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, obviously.
I just,
Um,
yeah. What's the realistic one that you think?
yeah, the realistic one, I think, I think I would probably go Andrew Wiggins at the 3 spot for me, realistically speaking. So like same 4 plus Andrew Wiggins, similar size, or sorry, gives you some more size, sorry.
Hmm.
And he can also play point of attack, and you can have him kind of chase around Patty Mills a little bit too. And then offensively, like I said earlier, using kind of Kelly Olynyk and Dwight Powell as short role playmakers, that lob to Wiggins is always going to be there. The one that Draymond Green has kind of perfected with Iguodala and Wiggins. Um, so yeah, on a more serious note, I think I would start Wiggins. Um, but yeah, don't be surprised if Andrew Nemhard closes. That's all I'm gonna say.
Madden, do you have a starting 5 as we speak here today?
I haven't thought about it a lot. Like it's obviously kind of, we got the wealth of talent and the riches. So it's, part of me wants to say like a 5 similar to last year at the World Cup, but obviously adding Jamal. Um, I wonder if like based on matchups, if Jordy doesn't maybe just have Dylan Brooks starting at the 3 type thing. So you would have Shea Jamal, obviously, like that's a no-brainer. I think you got to go uh, Kelly and Dwight, and then that 3 spot could go Dylan. I like Andrew Wiggins too. I think, listen, the whole debate around Wiggs kind of the last year and not having a great season to start in Golden State, you know, I, he's got an opportunity here to show some people like I'm still with it and I'm still like, the top 5 out of Canada and he's a type of athlete like, you know, Shaden Sharp kind of fits his athleticism, but Wake still is a crazy athlete. Give us a lot of difference making, I think, on both ends in that 3 spots. So I think it's going to be Dylan or Andrew Wiggins. I mean, that's would be probably my 5, and then you got Lou Dort coming off the bench and RJ Barrett, um, Andrew Nemhard for the guard. Like it's pretty sick.
It's crazy.
It's pretty it's
Like,
pretty cool, man. And like Jonathan made a great point about Andrew Nemhard. Like we're always on him for all the Canadian story for for this purpose, right? We're following them all year and their pro teams and whether it's in the NBA overseas and um he was a great story in the playoffs for the Pacers, let alone being Canadian. We all knew what was going on with this guy, but could we follow him? But he was one of the better stories in the playoffs and really demonstrated like he can get this done. So I think that's probably my 5. You swap out Dylan or Andrew, and then Andrew Wiggins, and you have some great options coming off the bench.
I keep thinking I actually saw Canada play here in Ottawa in 2018, and Brooks was there, Kelly, Dwight, and Nemhard, and RJ Barrett as 18-year-olds playing together, and they played AU together, I think at Montverde. So there is some chemistry there. I think that might make sense on in the backcourt off the bench. For me, I'm surprised you guys, and as much as I love Kelly Olynyk and Dwight Powell, I just don't think that's gonna be the starting group. I mean, I know Jonathan and Maddie, you remember that, at the end of the World Cup, Olynyk wasn't starting halves. He wasn't playing as much, and I just think he's not good enough defensively with a Powell who kind of clunks up the offense a little bit. I just don't think it makes sense for those two to be paired together, at least for long stretches. So I'm gonna go with what I think Jordy would probably do, just being there last year. I think the tough thing is, do you start Wiggins? I don't know if that's the right decision. Do I think it's the most likely one? Probably. And then I'm gonna have him, obviously Shea, Jamal, Wiggins, Brooks, and I'm gonna have Powell. And then my bench would be Nemhard, RJ, Dort, Nikhil, and Kelly. And that, to me, that feels very balanced. And wow, that's just crazy. I just said it out loud and now I'm like, oh my God, that is ridiculous. That team is better than the Raptors, just the backup unit.
Well,
I
Well,
we
will
haven't,
say
yeah,
though, I think
we didn't even talk about Nikhil. Like that's the other thing. We haven't even mentioned the name once in this group, right? And um, man, elite on-ball defender. Loved his season in Minnesota, and I've told kind of some friends and family or whatever that would listen to me, but he's kind of become like my favorite NBA guy out of Canada. I just love what he's done for his career in that situation. He's a good dude, man. So you know he's gonna. I feel like he's gonna hit a big shot or two. He's got the capability, and um, we're sitting pretty with this roster, man.
what do you think, like Jonathan, like just to go off that a little bit, rotations? Uh, I know it's early, but I feel like we should talk about this a lot, just to like imagine it a little bit and have some fun here. Like, what do you think makes sense for this team in terms of rotations? Who should be playing with who? Just like early on, it doesn't have to be too much into the deep end. I'm expecting the deep
yeah,
ends on July like 11th, 12th, 13th. Not
yeah, we'll
right,
see.
but
Yeah.
what do you think kind of makes sense with this group in terms of guys that might play together and nice
Yeah.
little
Sure. Yeah. I think just before that, I think I was gonna say, like, I think actually, like you said about Kelly last tournament at the World Cup, I think he was probably one of the more disappointing players for me as well. Um, coming into it, I was like, this guy is part of the core, like the core within the core. It was Shea and Kelly to me that were like clear, especially because Kelly's always been really good in the FIBA game. Um, so the fact that he struggled a lot, I mean, defensively, we kind of all knew. Um, but I think he struggled a lot even offensively. Um, but I don't have the number, so I'll have to go
He
back and
had
check
he
that
had a
again.
great start. The first two games he was awesome, and then he kind of fell off and played
Yeah,
decently in a couple games late. But yeah, he kind of fell off a little bit at the end.
yeah. I mean, and then yeah, to go back to your question, I think the rotation is definitely kind of like it's kind of interesting because I think Jordy has an opportunity to do something that and really double down on kind of what he wants to do, right? I think and kind of you saw it in the starting five you mentioned. He's last summer at least when Canada needed to get stops, it was switch everything with Powell at the five. Um, and part of that is Powell's a little more mobile, so he can kind of stay a little bit more on the perimeter. But also part of it is also Shea is such a tall point guard that, and uses length, so post entry passes are just a little bit harder. So I think, and just based on kind of what you said, actually, I actually kind of like the rotation that you said now that you after you said it.
Hey,
But
that's your job, Jonathan, not mine.
no, 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 that was a good one. But I think I think if Jordy wants to lean into that and just go full 48 minutes, I think it'll be tough to kind of rebound a lot and kind of control the offensive glass for the opposing team if we do kind of go small throughout. Um, but the flip side is that like we're going to try and have a really kind of strong perimeter defense and try to contain people from getting to the rim in the first place. So I think for rotations, I think I think the biggest thing that Jordy needs to kind of iron down, and what I'll be watching for in the exhibition games, is how he's gonna kind of integrate Shea and Jamal Murray. I
Yeah.
had a tweet about this a couple weeks ago that I was a little bit more concerned. And I saw Jordy's like interview where he was like, "Oh, I'm not concerned at all." So, he's obviously much smarter at basketball than me. So maybe he's cooking up something. Um, but I think it's hard to like play with two guards and put them in the same actions. Um, and you kind of see this problem with like not exactly, but kind of with Tatum and Brown because they're like similar sizes. It's or like Kawhi and PG, where like if you just do a simple kind of screen and roll, it's an easy switch, or like a pick and roll, it's an easy switch, right? Because they're probably being defended by similar sized defenders.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's up to Jordy to be a little more creative with what he's going to draw up. Maybe that means bringing a third person in, and then I think someone like Kelly Olynyk and his playmaking is going to be incredibly valuable there as kind of like a core trio for the offense. Um, but yeah, so I think that's what I'll be watching out for. Well, the good news is like Jamal is a very willing off-ball player and an off-ball screener, especially in Denver. So I'm sure they'll be able to figure it out. But I think the most important rotation thing to get um, working during the exhibitions is what they're going to do with Jamal and Shea on the
Yeah.
court on offense.
Yeah. Maddie, is there any like part of this roster or player that you're really just excited about? You mentioned Nikhil, but anyone else that's maybe, obviously Jamal and Shea, it speaks for itself, but is there anyone else that you're kind of interested in to see how they're incorporated into this roster, into this team, and how they'll do at the Olympics?
Well, I think number one, like Shea and Jamal are going to have a ton of attention, and Jamal hasn't played for Canada in so long, right? You go back to the Pan Am games, the young 18-year-old. So I want to see how Jamal is in the red and white, man. Like it's arguably him and Shea as the top two guys in the program for Canada. You know, superstars, if you will, in the NBA, and it's time to see Jamal playing for Canada basketball at the biggest stage. And you think about, they had a short run in the playoffs, him and the Nuggets, but man, was like he had those big shots against the Lakers, right? Well, could you imagine Jamal doing that for the gold medal game? I mean, come on, man. You guys could bury me the next day.
Who
I'm
takes
good.
the last shot? Who takes the last shot? We're gonna start it. We're gonna do
Oh
ESPN
my
style.
gosh, man.
First take.
ESPN style.
Who takes the last shot? Who's the alpha? No, I'm kidding. Who takes the
The
first shot?
cap, the captain, Kelly Olynyk.
Oh my God. He
That's a good
almost
answer.
made that
No, I mean,
shot against the USA. Oh my God. I can
right?
still
I
see him.
I said that last summer. I wanted that for Kelly so bad.
Oh my God.
Um, I don't know, man. I mean, what kind of dribble handoff screen roll action, Jonathan, would they be doing on a last possession to get a look, and who's maybe that open shooter, right? So I mean,
Oh man. That is
Jamal can get cooking, and then he's just lights out. So maybe it's
it's
Jamal Murray.
I still think it's Shea. I know Jamal Murray's made those crazy shots. I still just think Shea gets to his shots way a bit easier. And with Canada last year, I can almost see Jonathan's tweets in my mind when Shea hit those two shots against the USA. The first one that we thought was essentially the put away shot, and then which was like a crazy step back, and then the ankle breaking shot that everyone remembers where Shea's ankles broke at the same time, but somehow he has ankles. I don't really understand it, but is who do you think takes the last shot, Jonathan?
So I'm gonna go with a non-answer here, a democratic answer. I think what's gonna happen is the ball will be in Shea's hand, and what you're gonna do is kind of put all of the three other players flat on the baseline, and then have Jamal Murray sprint and ghost the pick and roll and slip it, and then it'll be up to Shea in that momentary hesitation from the defenders that are defending the action. It's going to be up to Shea to say, okay, am I going to just drive this and go to a mid range, or am I going to kick it out to Murray, who will probably be open from three? So that's my answer. That's my answer.
Okay.
Non-answer.
My answer, I'm going way off the board. I'm only giving this player the ball if we're against USA and LeBron James is on the court, and that is Dylan Brooks. Agree.
Hell yeah.
That is my answer. If it's USA and LeBron on the court, we need Dylan Brooks. I remember 59 very well. And I can see Bill Simmons getting hurt by it at the same time, which brings me joy. But I think overall I still like Shea, but I'm so excited for Dylan the villain, man. It's just gonna be such a fun team, so much talent on this roster, and I'm so excited to kind of just oh my God. Like I know I'm rambling and I forgive the audience, but it's gonna be such a fun summer for Canada basketball. And I guess with that, when we talk about how fun it will be, what are the expectations, guys? What do you think the expectations are? Is it gold? Is it medal? I think it has to be at least a medal. But are we talking about gold here, right? I think it should be in play, but what do you guys think, Maddie?
Yeah, good question. I haven't about it a ton. I know, like, we kind of talked about it last summer after the World Cup and looking ahead to this summer and potential roster. Obviously, the program's thinking go win it, but you know, um, I think a medal is definitely attainable, right? And I mean, how great would it be to get an opportunity to win the gold versus the United States um, this summer in Paris and have Dylan just doing the stare down at the start of the game to the bench and LeBron and just the drama and the attention and because that'd be massive for the program. I mean, people know how good Canada basketball is now, but even some of the American media today with the announcement of the invite list were like, wow, that's a really good team, right? So the rest of the world is looking at Canada as a power and yeah, I think a medal has to be attainable, no question. I mean, I'd love for it to be a gold. I think we got the dogs to do it. Um, I think that the unity and the cohesion going back, obviously, to last summer and the success, but even summer prior with some really core players, bodes really well. I don't know that a lot of other programs have that luxury as of late. Typically, or traditionally, some of the other programs do, right? But um, yeah, let's it's a good schedule, like I said, and I think the guys kind of have an understanding with each other now and the program, and um, let's go get a medal.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think like they should be medal contenders, right? And I was just looking at the team. So there's Germany. It's probably a strong medal contender after becoming the World Cup champions. France probably this year is gonna have a better showing, because yeah, their guard play was like not good, and they brought in a lot more guards, such as Killian Hayes, I think. But of course USA. So I think that's already three. So I think Canada is definitely a contender. And I think the expectation should be that they should try and medal. Well, and I think like what medal it becomes will become more clear if we see like the bracket and how it settles out. Because like if they face America in the semifinals, for example, like I still think America is gonna win out. Um, so like I don't think it's like I don't think it's a failure if they win bronze in that situation versus like let's say like they play Germany in the semis and they lose. Maybe we looked back at that as like a missed opportunity, right?
Mhm.
So I think they are definitely medal contenders, and the World Cup last year really has calmed my nerves down when it comes to Canada basketball. Like I think that we've always been kind of underachievers in the last like 10, 15, 20 years before leading up to it. So I think, yeah, medal should be the expectation. And if we don't get a medal, I'm sure we're gonna have to kind of rethink the roster construction, rethink, strategy, tactics. But I think
Yeah.
we're in a good spot.
I think that they should be gunning for gold. Now, I'm not saying it's a disappointment if they lose. I don't think that would be the case. Like if they get a silver or they get a bronze, I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, as you said, if they lose to Germany in the semis, it's different than the USA in the semis. But I think as a whole, with not just Canada, but this international basketball, men's basketball has become so competitive. I think this will be the most competitive tournament with Germany, France, Canada, Australia. Like there's most of these teams are gonna
Serbia. I think I forgot to
Serbia.
mention that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Serbia. Like there's that, and so in a sense, if you said this team going into a tournament 10 years ago, it's maybe them and Spain and the USA. But I think we are that in a sense that Spain now alongside maybe a Serbia and Germany as well, of past years. So I think they can win the gold. I don't think it's not um it's not a disappointment per se if they don't.
yeah, they're
But
not favorites.
but if
Is what
you but it's one game. You have Jamal Murray, Shea Gilgeous, like look at the team. Like sure, the USA has unbelievable players, but it's not like Canada is throwing out scrubs, no pun intended. I love you, Phil and Tommy. And they went to my alma mater. But
Carlton.
yeah, it's been a tough year for Carleton basketball on the men's side.
Oh yeah, it
Women
was
kick
very
ass.
bad this year
We
for the
we
men's
we
side.
might. I mean, Shea Jamal, like best backcourt in the world,
Yep. I
potentially, right? So I mean, um, they might just be that difference to hit a winner or whatever, right? So I mean, we 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 had a lot of questions about the World Cup last summer, and the guys just went and competed and got it done. And um, you know,
and they
this summer could be the same.
And I think the thing we talked about last year was like the continuity, right? And it will be different this year for sure. Like it's gonna be different, and there won't be in some ways there won't have that continuity. In another way, they like Shea, Dillon, all those guys just played, their hearts out in wars for a month, right? And
Mhm.
they know FIBA basketball, they have that chemistry, and then you're adding ancillary pieces like a Jamal Murray and Andrew Nemhard, which they really needed in terms of just scoring. I still think size, as we've mentioned, will be, in a sense, the determining factor, alongside a little bit of just if you play USA and KD and LeBron are killing it, then they're killing it. But I just think that you look at USA last year, or at the last Olympics, they brought maybe not as good a team as they are this time around, but a really good team. They beat France, who I don't think is close to this Canadian team, by 5, and it was a dogfight. And I just think I don't think if you say USA versus the field, I think I take the field just because of how good Germany, Serbia, like there's just not many France with Wemby and Gobert, and they have some as not Killian Hayes, but other good Frenchmen on that team. I just think the level of basketball will be so good, and I think Canada has the talent to beat. It's one game. It's not a best of 7, right? And I just think that if all these guys go and are relatively healthy, Canada can win the gold medal. And I think that should be what did Masai say? That should be the expectation or whatever when we should expect championships here in Toronto. It's like the same thing for Canada basketball. We need to get used to being the big dog that expects to win. Maybe not be the favorite, but one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the world.
I think real quick, like Shea did an interview a little while ago just talking about the summer and the matchup potentially with USA, and he was sitting down and um, I think it was the ESPN, and he like, we know these guys, we see them all year, they know us, right? So I don't think he's phased by it all. I trust that man, and he's an incredible leader and the face of the program, and I just feel like he's going to make some good things happen. And and the additions that are going to come to this roster this summer from last year are easy pieces and players to just fit in. Like you don't have to do much to make Jamal Murray work on this team or fit, if you will. Same with Andrew Nemhard and Wiggs too. So it's going to be a great roster, man. You know, I'm hoping selfishly Melvin Edrum gets a spot at the end. But we got to take who we got to take in terms of best compete, and the brass know what they have and ahead of them and their options, and I trust the program and I trust their decisions.
I also want to say that I think Shea Gilgeous Alexander is a bad man, and if you look at Team USA, I think he arguably is the best player on either of those two rosters. I still think Jokic is the best player in the world, so I'm not going to cede that to Shea. Not, and that's not a slight at all at Shea. But outside of, we might have, and Wemby could honestly be the best. I don't know. Wemby's crazy, but if you look at it, Canada has arguably will have the best player on the court in almost every matchup. And when the game's on the line, we have Jamal Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, right? And I think that is such a big bonus that, why did Canada beat Spain in that game? Because they had Shea. It wasn't
Right.
Dylan Brooks too, but really like Shea down the stretch, right? And Spain didn't even Shea outdo Luka. I don't think Luka will probably be at the Olympics this year. That helps in some ways. So Giannis might, but still, like, I just think you have the best player on the court. You have a really good team. I'm sorry. I'm still saying gold, boys. I'm gonna say it until I'm proven wrong, and somehow Canada loses in triple overtime in the quarters or something, and then yeah, yeah. Does anyone have anything else they kind of want to, any plot points before we wrap this long but really fun podcast up?
Yeah, I got one more point to make. So at the media availability today, Rowan Barrett, and I'm quoting Oren's tweet right now, he said that they want to grow defensively. And so, and like offensively, they've been a really good team in like the last 3 years running or whatever, something like that. And one of the areas they were looking to improve was defense. So before the pod, I took a quick look at the numbers just to see like what are they looking at potentially. And I think, you know what? Rowan was right. So at the World Cup, okay, and these are all from like Hack the Stats, which is like a free advanced stats for the World Cup. In terms of like offensive points per possession, they were fourth in the tournament. And offensive rating, they were second in the tournament. Okay, which, incredible offense, like Rowan said. Defensively, though, and on rebounding, they were more middle of the pack. So defensive points per possession, 0.98, which was 18th out of 32.
Hmm.
Defensive rating was 15th out of 32. And then rebounding, 37.0 per game, 14th out of 32. So I think, they probably looked at these numbers plus a lot more kind of proprietary data probably. And I think the fact that they brought kind of, let me count, 7 bigs, I'm including Brissett as kind of a big here, I think, to training camp, I think that kind of speaks a little bit to kind of the lack of size that we were talking about, but also maybe like trying to prioritize more rim protection, because yeah, like as good as like perimeter defenders that we had last year with Nikhil, Dort, and Brooks, they were still interestingly a middling kind of offensive, or sorry, defensive team, and I think that's including playing like, I think when they like just absolutely killed Lebanon. So, yeah, so like I think there's like, at the beginning, like we said, like there were improvements that needed to be made, even though I'm a very big proponent of the core. Um, but yeah, I think if this just shows that I think if they're peopling up top in Canada basketball, they kind of know what they're doing. So
I think if you get a good, like the best version of Wiggins or close to 2022, that is like the perfect ad who can rebound and can bring you a bit of size too and defensive versatility. Now, I don't know what kind of Wiggins we'll get. I think we're probably going to get a pretty good one, considering it's the Olympics. And, if he underperforms, that's on him because, like, it's the big. And he played well in the finals. Like, he was probably the second best player outside of Steph Curry when they beat the Celtics in 2022. So I agree. I think, the ads they will have, at least in terms of um, Jamal Murray and Nemhard isn't really helping your defense. Wiggins could be, but I think what will really make the difference is that size component, right? And I think that's why for me, Uncle Mel might not be on the team, is just because you need another big. which could be Cabangeli, Birch, all those guys that I'm on the Birch train if he's healthy, but maybe I've seen him too much from 2019. But yeah. What about you, Maddie? Is there anything that you're looking for before we head off?
Not so much. Just want to see them, do camp. I know you'll be there. Get some insight from you and others what camp looks like. And get a sense of how this roster is going to shape up. And obviously leading up to the game against the U.S. in Vegas. And if Mel's on the outside looking in, then I think you got to go Edie and Lyles as the last two for this team. That would be my pick if Mel's not going to go. And then yeah, on the flip side too, support the women's program. They got an incredible run ahead of them as well, and I know they're really excited. Probably the last opportunity for some of their veteran players, so it's going to be bittersweet for the women's side of the program as well. And it's going to be a great summer for Canada basketball, and um, can't wait to lock in on the games with you guys
Yeah.
and have more discussions.
Yeah, and just so people know, I will be doing some women's stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to be at women's training camp, but at the Olympics, I'll be doing post-game recaps and all that stuff. So women's basketball, you haven't lost me. It's just there hasn't been a direct training camp roster yet, and this is the moment and time for the men's team, but the women's team will get their shine. And I see you, Aaliyah Edwards, playing with a broken nose. So keep doing what you're doing, Kingston's finest. But thank you guys so much for taking the time and doing this. I know we'll have more chats like this throughout the summer. I think I don't know if anything can beat me when they qualified for the Olympics and then Dylan Brooks going berserk against USA, but I have a sneaky suspicion I'm gonna be matching that energy later this summer. So and I can see Maddie Ireland just getting really giddy with joy to just even talking about last year, and I think this year will be in some ways even better. So thank you guys for taking the time and doing this, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Alex.
Yep. Thanks, Alex.